Thank you again, everyone, for joining us for another one of our financial education webinars. I'm excited to be able to put these on for our clients. This one will be specifically on Social Security. We'll do a high-level overview of Social Security for people, and then drill down a little bit into the major updates for 2025, which includes the change to the WEP, call it, and the GPO. So we'll be going through some of those changes. This is a very in-depth, very nuanced, and detail-rich presentation and slide deck. So this will all be recorded, and we are going to go over sections that we feel are applicable to the general public. If there's anything that we skip over that you want to see, these slides will be available with the recording, but you can also reach out to Luke or myself if you have any specific questions, because Social Security is a little bit different for everyone. This will also be put onto our client center on our website. So as I said, we do multiple of these financial education webinars. If you go onto our client center, you'll see some that are on estate planning. We brought in the partner for a local estate planning firm. We've done some on personal and casualty insurance, which I think right now is very relevant for all of us to be looking at. So we brought in the owner of a multi-generational firm to discuss that. And we've also done some others on end-of-life planning, brought in the owner of a funeral home. So important topics that are coinciding with what we go over with clients. So today's Beyond Social Security, and the experts we're bringing in is Luke and I. So with that, I will move forward. And if you do have any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat or the Q&A section. We'll answer them if it's something that's relevant to where we are in the process, or else we'll answer it at the end. So, Luke, if I could have you get started.
Sure. And as James was discussing, this deck is very in detail, so we're going to be skipping over some things, but everyone's situation is different. So just make sure you reach out to us, especially if you're reaching any of these keystone ages that we're going to discuss first. So all these ages here, not all of them are relevant to Social Security. However, they are important. So I would just take a quick glance at if you're around any of these ages. But for Social Security specifically, we're looking really at age 60 is one of the first, or is the first key age to be aware of if you have a survivor benefit. So unfortunately, if one of your spouse passed, you could technically take it as early as 60. Again, you would always want to speak with your advisor first to see if that's worthwhile, because as we will show you as we go through this deck, there are pros and cons to everything. If you take any sort of benefit early, the government generally isn't going to be giving you all the money, we'll just say. Another age that's it's not tied into Social Security, but it is close, is Medicare at 65. So we're not going to be going over Medicare. We're not going to be going over age 55 rule. We're just going to be focusing on Social Security, but these are some of the ages we want to look at. One that isn't here is the required minimum distribution age is eventually going to turn to 75 as well. So that's not on here. We don't know the exact date. It's sometime in 2030 that will be happening in that time frame. So first page that we're going to look at here is really how is Social Security, how do you get the benefit? You have to work for at least 10 years. It says 40 quarters, but it's 10 years. One thing I would want to touch on is this here, the 35 years of your average highest earning years. So why is this important is that as you're older, generally you're going to be making much more money than your first job, maybe working at Dunkin' Donuts. In my example, because that was my first job. So I'd hope that I make more money now than I did when I was like 14 or 15 years old. So if I've been working for 35 years and then I work another year, 36 years, now that year that I only might have made $2,000 or $3,000 is wiped off my average amount of earnings, and now I have a much higher earning year, hopefully. Cost of living adjustment, this is just showing what it was for 2025. Unfortunately, we didn't get a massive cost of living adjustment like we did the prior year. And this just shows taking your benefit early. You do get a significant penalty for taking your benefit early. But if you delay your benefit, you also get a significant increase as we see. So we'll go over some types of planning you can do with that on and further into the slides here. All right. Skipping over this. Sorry, we are going to be skipping over some things because it's either reiterates itself too many different ways. But just quickly to look at this slide, generally we tell most clients if they're 62 and they're still working and they want to begin benefit, generally it doesn't make sense. And this shows it here. And I'll just give you a real number example. So say you made $33,400, so $10,000 more than this benefit, your Social Security benefit would actually be reduced by $5,000 because it's for $1 a benefit is withheld for every $2 over. The year that you turn your full retirement age, which is usually 67 now, it could be 66 in so many months. It's 1 in every 3. So it would be reduced by 33,333. Another example or on how Social Security is really how we're paying for Social Security is the limit right now for your income is 176,100. So what does that mean is that high income earners, say they make $200,000 a year. As soon as they cross that threshold of 176,100, now they're no longer paying into Social Security. So they would see more take-home pay in their paycheck because they're no longer paying into it. However, then after 200,000, you're going to be paying an additional Medicare tax. So you'll see an increase and then you'll see a slight decrease. This is one of the ways people ask James and I all the time, well, I'm not going to get Social Security by the time I can take benefit. There's ways that the government can increase the amount you either pay into Social Security, penalize you more for taking it early, reducing the amount you get if you delay. There's all different ways that they can still keep it in force. One of the ways is they could just take the cap off this here or increase the cap. Every year this is getting inflated anyways. It used to only be like 150,000, then it went to 165,000, now it's 176. So this is increasing the amount that you continue to pay in, but one way is that they could substantially increase this so that people making $500,000 a year are still dumping a lot of money into Social Security. Go to the next slide here. So this is important with spousal benefits. So with Social Security, if you have one, I'm just going to use James as an example here that he's the working spouse. His wife stays at home, takes care of the kids. So he's going to have a Social Security benefit. Hers, she'll probably still have a slight benefit from when she was working. However, more likely than not, she's going to get a spousal benefit from James when he begins benefit. I'm surprised the slide here doesn't really show the max benefit is 50% of the primary insurance amount, which we'll go over in another slide. This is an important piece of information down here is that even if James took his benefit early before full retirement age, which for James currently, I mean, it could change in the future, is 67, say he took it early at 62, it actually wouldn't reduce his wife's spousal benefit as long as she still waited to her full retirement age, which would also be 67. I know that's very confusing, but basically, easier number's sake, I'll use the next slide, I'll be able to show you a little bit better. So this is actually going over survivor benefit, but with, sorry, let me go back a page here. Actually, no. All right. So if James were to make, say, $2,000 of a benefit and his wife's benefit was only $500, she'd be able to actually get 50% of James of the 1,000. She wouldn't be able to get both. She would just get her $500 increase to 1,000. But survivor benefit, that's not the case. If James were to pass, she would be able to step into the whole $2,000 benefit. So survivor benefit is more forgiving to the survivor, but you would not be able to take both your benefit and the survivor. It's just the higher of the two. There is a widower's benefit as well. that you could take it as early as 60. But again, anytime you take a benefit early, Social Security is going to limit the amount that you receive. The government's going to limit that amount. But you would always receive the higher of either your own benefit or the survivors. There are certain techniques that you could do, which James or I or your advisor would be able to discuss with you, such as taking the survivor benefit at an earlier age. So maybe you do need the income at 60 and that you have your own working history of having a decent benefit, delaying your benefit until age 70 and switching it. So you would start with the lower survivor or widower's benefit and then let your Social Security benefit continue to grow and then take it at 70. So that is another strategy that we can do with Social Security. Again, these are very specific to what you need, what your income is, and what your assets are. So you would always want to speak with us before just making the decision. I think one of the most difficult things that we have with newer clients or prospects that onboard with us is they already took their Social Security benefit at 62, and now they're maybe 63 or 64, so there's really no way to reverse it. There are certain caveats where you can pay back Social Security and take it, but after a year, you can't do that anymore. And they might have already started taking distributions. It makes our job a little bit more difficult because we can't really guarantee you massive increases of income like you can with Social Security. Each year you delay it, you're basically getting about an 8% increase in pay for the rest of your life. So always talk to us before you decide to take your benefit. The only time you really wouldn't have to at that point is if you delayed to 70 because that's the highest amount. But hopefully you're talking to us before you hit 70 if you're already a client. All right, so I'm going to be skipping over this section here. This goes into how I was discussing before, survivor and spousal, to just a little bit more detail. This uses the example of the higher income earners benefit is about 2,500. At age 70, it's 3,100. So that's just showing a big increase for delaying. It also shows you that no matter what, the survivor benefit is going to be the same. The difference is going to be the spousal benefit. So there's no penalty here for the lower income spouse starting at 67 to receive the benefit. Their benefit, as you can see, is 1,000. But because 50% of the higher income would be 1,250, so 2,500 divided by 2, the lower income earner gets their benefit of 1,000 plus the additional 250. It cannot go over 50% of the primary earner's full retirement age benefit. But if we go down here, shows that they took it early. The lower income earner took it at 62. So the total benefit they would receive now is 950 instead of 1,250. So all this is monthly as well. So if we times this by 12, you'll get the full year amount. But the survivor benefit, even if they took the spousal at 62, does not get reduced. It's still 3,100. So generally, James, myself, Michael, Steve, the higher income earner, especially if there's more of an age gap, we would generally advise them to wait until age 70 to claim benefit. Because if they were to pass before the lower income earner, that lower income earner gets to step into the benefit, that's the higher amount. They don't get to get both, like I said, but they get the higher amount. So it's just more, we try to plan as always as a family, not just for one individual person. And there's not many things, like I said, that we can do to give you such a guaranteed increase in money. Okay. Now I'm going to skip a little bit here. And James is going to be taking over here. And hopefully this isn't him and his wife, but
Yes.
we're going to be discussing some divorce benefits.
Yeah, I'll take on the fun part here. But thank you, Luke. Uh, yes, and just to reiterate again, as I do know we're skipping, and then when we are covering things, it is very detailed. This is recorded, and this is really for educational purposes. As Lucas said a few times here, please give us a call before you make any of these irrevocable decisions. As far as the divorce benefit, so what Luke has gone over has been if you're married, and both spouses are alive and deciding on collecting, or if you were married and a spouse passed, This is if someone is divorced. The example that my dad has always used, so admittedly, this is a little past my generation, but it calls it the Johnny Carson rule. He had multiple marriages and had multiple ex-spouses collecting on his benefit at the same time. The divorce rules generally follow the same rules as a spousal or a survivor, just some minor exceptions. For it, you to be able to collect, the marriage had to have lasted for 10 years. So one of the sections here, also for you to collect on a spousal, your former spouse has to have been eligible for Social Security and has to be be able to collect. They don't have to be collecting, but they have to be able to collect for you to get a spousal. So they have to be age 62 or older or disabled. It does not affect their benefit. So when you start collecting, you don't need their permission, right? You don't need to call to have them provide anything to Social Security. It doesn't reduce what they're receiving, so they're not going to see a change. There's no impact if there are other spouses, hence the Johnny Carson reference. This is something where it's private, but you just need to be aware, were you married for 10 years and are they eligible for Social Security? If it's a spousal, if it's a survivor, they don't have to have been eligible at the time. They just have to have qualified for benefits. So then, Luke, do you mind going to slide 21 here? So the sections we just skipped over. This slide deck was created apparently before the changes with the windfall provision and the government pension offset changes. So we were going to cover that in a different slide. For this here, the other major payout for Social Security is disability. There are two different types. There's SSDI, which is the first column here, and the second one is SSI. There's a lot of different nuanced differences, so I'm not going to go too deeply into here. One thing I will say, though, is Social Security disability is one of the hardest forms to get. So oftentimes employers will offer the ability to get short-term or long-term disability benefits. You can go and purchase your own plan. Most people choose not to because they will just fall back onto Social Security disability. And I can just tell you through experience with clients, it is very difficult to get. I don't think I've ever had anyone receive it on their first go around. But there is a benefit, and it will continue to pay through your full retirement age. And once you turn full retirement age, oftentimes it will just continue to pay now as a retirement benefit instead of a disability. You do have, once you're eligible, as we looked at earlier, spouse or divorced spouses are able to also collect based on your eligibility. And then, okay, I think I'm going to be able to share my screen. So if you can all bear with us for a moment. I'll share here. Are you seeing here, Luke?
Yep.
Excellent. Okay, thank you. So the other things to be aware of, Social Security will pay if eligible family members. So if you are disabled and you have children under the age of 16 or 18, there are different times that comes into play. Social Security will pay them a benefit, same as your spouse, depending on your children's ages. So this is a big benefit for people, either disability or who've passed away young and they have young children. There is a cap, though. So if you have many, many children, if you have usually 3 or more children, then you will start to see a cap on how much they'll pay the whole family. So if you are in the average category of 2 children, then there won't be a cap, but typically after that, there's a reduction because there's a family limit. So that would be something to take a look at there. These are, again, widower benefits, as Luke had talked about earlier, when it came to survivor benefits, is really in that first category. And then, as I referenced to, if you are disabled or someone passes away, their spouse does have the ability to access funds, and this starts if you have children under the age of 16, and it will pay out through their age of 16, or if they're permanently disabled, as long as you're taking care of them. One of the last things here, won't get too deep into this formula because it is something else, but one thing that to be aware of is how much of your benefit is taxed. So this is another update to Social Security that hasn't been passed, but has been thrown out throughout the presidential election cycle, is should your Social Security benefit in retirement be taxed? Because really, you've been paying in all these years through a tax. Should they be taxing you and the money comes back out? Right now, the answer is yes, they are. And it's if you have if you are single and you have combined income of less than 25,000, or if you're married less than 32, then you don't pay tax on your benefit. As soon as you're over these amounts, you pay either 50% or up to 85% of the money you receive from Social Security is taxable. And part of these combined incomes do include your Social Security benefit. So it's a little bit of a circular thing that we look at. So when working with clients, we try to be careful of these thresholds, though oftentimes people are over in retirement the 44,000 of combined taxable income. Last part to go over here, as Luke had mentioned as well, Social Security's funding is through your FICA taxes, your payroll taxes. Right now, for employees, pay 6.2% of their paycheck into Social Security. Their employer pays the other half. So 12% of your annual pay is going into Social Security. One of the things, as Luke had mentioned, is there is a cap. So after someone makes 100 and I believe it's 75,000, Social Security stops taxing the next dollars. So if someone is making $1 million a year, they're only taxes if they're making the 175. And if that cap is removed, which was removed for the other half of FICA, Medicare, that alone would nearly fully fund any Social Security shortfalls, which I'll touch on later. So the rest of these slides, which will be available, do cover more of Social Security. I'm sorry, Medicare. So I'm not going to cover that part. I will share my screen an additional time here just to touch on one of the big changes being, again, the Windfall Elimination Provision and the government pension offset. So it's called the Social Security Fairness Act. So sorry, I've got the Social Security has actually put out a helpful little FAQ on these. So I would recommend anyone that thinks they may fall into these to go to this section here, and it will be provided with the slides when we put those. And then I'll share my screen one more time here with I apologize. I'm having some nice technical difficulties here. I will have to stop the share on this part, and I'll go through this part. I will also reiterate, if anyone has questions, please feel free to put them in the chat or in the Q&A section. But what I wanted to go over, the big change with the Windfall Elimination Provision, that was tied towards retirees. So it looked at if someone worked at a job where they were paying into a government pension, but were not paying into Social Security, and then they were to work another job either before or after that one and pay into Social Security, now they've technically qualified for a Social Security benefit, but they've also qualified for a government pension. And so there was a formula that came in and reduced how much you could receive on the Social Security end. And for some people, is a very significant reduction. So that formula is now being eliminated. On the other end, there was the government pension offset that affected spouses and widowers. And so, as Luke had mentioned earlier, you would have the ability to switch to your spouse's benefit. And so, in this case, if the spouse that passed had paid into Social Security, they had a benefit, and the spouse that survived didn't pay into Social Security, they had a pension. the survivor benefit would be reduced by roughly 2/3 of their pension. And in many cases, that could mean you would lose the survivor benefit from Social Security altogether. That's also being eliminated. What is interesting is the speed at which this was passed was such that Social Security can't keep up. So they are actually, from what we've been seeing, going through and manually updating about 3 million contacts to remove this. The good news is it is retroactive through January of 2024. So no matter how long it ends up taking for this to be done, it will be effective for January of 2024. So there would be, historically, we've seen lump sum payments for people that have asked to have retroactive payments to them, though depending on the size, it may even be something that gets added into your check over your lifetime. They haven't necessarily come up with that solution. It is also, if you go to that frequently asked question website that will provide, they do also talk about having a no set timeline. When will you see your first increased check? But one thing that is I've seen a few places is encouraging people to apply. So if you haven't applied because you knew your benefit would be reduced or eliminated, just still apply now. So you've started your clock. So when they do the retroactive benefits, you've applied as of this date. That can be done online. You can call in or you can go into one of their offices. There is a substantial wait time calling the Social Security. So I would encourage people to start with going online to apply again if you haven't because you thought you wouldn't qualify for anything, because now you would, and you just want to get that clock ticking. One of the concerns that may affect the group at large, and people have joined here, one of the concerns is Social Security, as it is set already, is going to run out of its trust fund by 2035. So what does that mean? It's a scarier headline than it may actually be. Right now, Social Security for years was receiving more money than it was paying out. And so that difference was built up into a trust fund. But now we've switched with the aging of America, and as more and more baby boomers have retired, and Luke and I's generation isn't keeping up, what we're finding is that now money's coming out of the trust fund, and that trust fund is set to run out in 2035. So what would happen if Congress does nothing? Then you would still be receiving the money that's coming in the door from payroll taxes of those who are working, but covers about 75% of the benefit. So in 2035, if nothing is done, then Social Security retirees would still receive 75 cents of every dollar they were promised. I do believe that there will be changes to Social Security. I mean, at some point, it becomes a political expedient to be the one that fixes it. But right now, it's not. It's not something that's popular to talk about raising taxes or talk about changing full retirement ages or anything like that. But that's one thing that is out there. And so how will this provision, how will the Social Security Fairness Act impact it? Well, we've seen a few studies have come out and said it will actually cause the trust fund to run out a year or two earlier, so 2033 or 34 with this change. Before I keep going from there, I do see we have a question came in through the chat. Yeah. So the question here is on a reduction because of the receipt of foreign pensions. So if you're someone that's receiving, you are a citizen from outside of the U.S., or at least we're living in a country. I have a few clients who are receiving pensions from places in Israel, in the UK, in some EU nations do pay pensions to their citizens after a certain number of years. So I don't have any update on there and haven't really been able to get a clear answer on if that is going to eliminate your Social Security. I do believe that it likely won't have a significant impact. This was more for people receiving U.S. pensions, but it will be interesting to see how that gets updated. Luke, I don't know if you want to take this. It was on kind of your slides about, is there a earning limit if you wait to take Social Security until 70?
Yeah, so there's no limit after you reach your full retirement age. So if your full retirement age is 66 and so many months, you can earn as much as you want after that. You can earn $1 million a year in your Social Security, you'll still get the full Social Security amount. So if you wait till 70, that's perfectly fine. You can start the benefit from 66 in so many months, or 67, 68, 69, or 70. Generally, we're gonna recommend you wait till 70, usually if you can afford to, just so you get that higher payment amount, but you can continue to work as much as you'd like after full retirement age and collect benefit.
Excellent. And to that point, some of the strategies we've employed with clients in the past, as Luke had mentioned, having the higher income earner wait until age 70, but if there's a lower income earner, they could start collecting at their full retirement age if they wanted. Depending on health or age differences, they could collect sooner. Not generally a recommendation, but could be done. And then switching their benefit till a later point. So there's a lot of things that can be done, particularly if you have a spouse. There's a lot of timing that can be done with that. So just some things to be aware of there. Um, I want to see if we have pause there for a moment, see if we have any other questions coming in. Let's see any specific questions here. As I said, one thing that Congress is discussing but has not pushed through is eliminating the income tax on Social Security benefits, which would be an enormous boon for retirees. Then, that because those uh, would have a substantial impact on the economy and the markets and such. So it would be interesting to see where that goes through. But that wasn't part of this current act. This one was a little more limited in scope.
What I would say is just one question I get a lot, I'm sure you get it too, James, once in a while, is if you retire before full retirement age, or you just retire in general, you don't have to start your benefit immediately. So unfortunately, I think a lot of people are confused by that, is that they retire, they feel like they have to start their benefit. That's not the case. The things you want to be aware of if you retire, though, would be more like Medicare. You still want to be enroll in that. There's a special enrollment window. I know we're not going into that today, but that's more something you need to be very aware of when you retire.
Yes. And just to put the plug out there again, our client center, we have done a webinar with a New Hampshire Medicare broker. And so you can find more information on that there. So, those are the highlights we wanted to make sure we went over with the changes in Social Security. The big change being the law with the WEP, the Windfall Elimination Provision, and the GPO, as well as the cost of living, which changes, and some of the benefit changes that Luke had covered. I can't reiterate it enough. In our industry, we call this the brother-in-law conversation, where clients say, my brother-in-law is doing this, and so, I want to do this with my Social Security, only to find out that, if anything is different, if the marriage status is different, the income numbers are different, age numbers are different, that it could be something better for you. So we do run calculations and break-even analysis to figure out, when's the best time to take things. There are some not affected by these changes, some pensions from private employers. We have a lot of Eversource employees, for instance, up here in New Hampshire and in New England, that has some pension benefits that you can tie in with Social Security. We've been working with a lot of government employees who've been receiving that fork in the road email to look at their Social Security benefits. If you're part of the FERS, for those who are part of it, what I'm referencing there. There are supplements on your pension until you collect Social Security. So there's a lot of things that can be tied together with these decisions. So if we have no further questions, give people back the rest of their afternoon. And if you do want to speak specifically about your situation, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. Oh, I do have someone jumped in time for the bell. Yeah, so a question here is, as a retired federal employee, can I now collect on my whole account? So yes, the technical answer is yes. So if you do qualify for Social Security, I would encourage you uh, to apply. If you haven't quite hit your target for qualifying, it would be worth now considering, do I go back and become a Walmart greeter, or work at Dunkin' Donuts for a year to now qualify for my benefits? And so I say that a little tongue in cheek, but a lot of people didn't try for their 10 years because there was going to be such a reduction or elimination altogether. That will go away. Now, I will say if you do qualify and you apply today again, you're not going to see the increase right away. They're still going through, the roughly 3 million people that this applies to. So you may not see it right away, but it would be retroactive to when you apply. So, or if you've already applied to January of 2024. Oh, looks like we have another question came in here as well.
And I can answer that, James. So you're at, I think it's they're asking about the max taxable earnings for 2025. It's 176,100.
Perfect. And yeah, the question with the gross net, it's a little tricky. One of the slides did reference what reduces your FICA taxable income. So for instance, 401k contributions do not reduce your FICA, but does reduce your state and federal tax rate. So there's a little more information on the slides in there, but generally the number Luke just said is what you're looking at. As I said, it's all nuanced. Excellent. Well, thank you everyone for joining us. It does take a day or two a couple days to edit this and put it into places that people can just quickly look into, sections that apply to them, and make sure that we have all of the things we referenced put into available on the website. So in a couple days, you'll receive an email from us just letting you know that it's available. If you want to forward on to your brother-in-law, let them know what things we've talked about or discussed, you can feel free to do that as well. So thank you everyone for joining us, and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.